Hey everyone, we're here for another chapter of Matilda by Roald Dahl. When we left last, the Trunchbull was in Matilda's classroom and she was not being very kind to any of the children.
Because she said Matilda never read the book that she
just doesn't like kids. So this chapter is called The First Miracle. What's a miracle?
Miracle is when something good happens and you're like, it worked.
Can it be explained? Sometimes things happen that can't be explained, but they end up making things a lot better. So I wonder. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Matilda sat down again at her desk. The Trunchbull seated herself behind the teacher's table. It was the first time she had sat down during the lesson. Then she reached out a hand and took hold of her water jug. Still holding the jug by the handle but not lifting it yet, she said, I have never been able to understand why small children are so disgusting. They're the bane of my life. They're like insects. They should be got rid of as early as possible. We get rid of flies with that fly spray and by hanging the fly paper. Do you ever see that? It's like a sticky paper that catches flies.
It's disgusting.
It's really gross.
There's like a bunch of dead flies.
Dead flies. Gross. It's like a what are those called? The fruit roll-ups, but with flies.
Wait. On Halloween, we watched this YouTube video, and there was a bug tape. There's this bug one, and this guy on it wanted not to eat it. And
Ew!
And the little boy.
And I gave you permission to watch this? Moving on. How splendid it would be to walk into this classroom with a gigantic spray gun in my hands and start pumping it, or get some huge strips of sticky paper. I'd hang them all around the school and you'd all get stuck in them and that would be the end of it. Would that be a good idea, Miss Honey?
Nope.
If it's meant to be a joke, headmistress, I don't think it's funny. You wouldn't, would you, Miss Honey? And it's not meant to be a joke. My idea of a perfect school, Miss Honey, is one that has no children.
She's gonna do it.
How did Listen to what I just said. Her idea of a perfect school is one with no children.
So she's doing How did she become a headmistress?
One of these days, I shall start up a school like that. I think it will be very successful. This woman is mad, Miss Honey thought to herself. She's round a twist. She's the one who ought to be got rid of. The Trunchbull now lifted the large blue porcelain water jug and poured some water into her glass. And suddenly, with the water, out came the long, slimy newt, straight into the glass. Plop. The Trunchbull let out a yell and leapt off of her chair as though a firecracker had gone off underneath her bottom. And now the children also saw this long, slimy, yellow-bellied lizard-like creature twisting and turning in the glass jar. What is it? It's disgusting. It's a snake. It's a baby crocodile. It's an alligator. Look out, Miss Trunchbull. I bet you it bites, Lavender said. The Trunchbull, this mighty female giant, stood there in her green breeches, quivering. Ooh, like a baby. She was especially furious that someone had succeeded in making her jump and yell like that because she prided herself on being tough. She stared at the creature twisting and wiggling in the glass. Curiously enough, she had never seen a newt before. Natural history was not her strong point. She hadn't the faintest idea what this thing was. It certainly looked extremely unpleasant. Slowly, she sat down again in her chair. She looked at this moment more terrified than ever before. The fire of fury and hatred was smoldering in her eyes. Matilda, stand up. Who, me? Stand up, you disgusting little cockroach. I haven't done anything, Miss Trunchbull. Honestly, I haven't. I've never seen that thing before. Stand up right now. Reluctantly, Matilda got to her feet. Lavender was in the row behind her, feeling guilty. She hadn't intended to get her friend into trouble. On the other hand, she was certainly not about to own up to what she did. You are a vile, repulsive, repugnant, malicious little brute, the Trunchbull was shouting. You are not fit to be in this school. You ought to be behind bars. That's where you ought to be. I shall have you drummed out of this establishment. In utter disgrace, I shall have the prefects chase you down the corridor and out of the front door with your hockey sticks. I shall have the staff escort you home under armed guard, and then I shall make absolutely sure you are sent to a reformatory for delinquent girls. Your hair is getting in my face, honey. A boarding school. The Trunchbull was in such a rage that her face had taken on a boiled color, and little flecks of froth were gathering at the corners of her mouth. But she was not the only one who was losing her cool. Matilda was also beginning to see red. When you see red, that means you're angry. She didn't in the least mind being accused of having done something that she actually did do. She could see the justice of that. It was totally a new experience for her to be accused of a crime that she definitely did not commit. She had absolutely nothing to do with this beastly creature in the glass, and by golly, she thought that rotten Trunchbull isn't going to pin this on me. I didn't do it, Matilda screamed. Oh, yes, you did, the Trunchbull roared back. Nobody else could have thought of a trick like that. Your father was right to have warned me about you. The woman had completely lost control of herself. She was ranting like a maniac. You are finished in this school, young lady. You are finished everywhere. I shall personally see to it that you are put away in a place where not even the crows land their droppings on you. You will probably never see the light of day again. I'm telling you, I never did it. I've never seen a creature like that in my life, Matilda screamed. You put a crocodile in my drinking water, the Trunchbull yelled back. There's no worse crime than that. Now, sit down and don't say a word. But I'm telling you, Matilda shouted, refusing to sit down. And I'm telling you to stop talking, the Trunchbull roared.
You forgot to show the picture.
I know. If you don't stop talking and sit down, I shall remove my belt and let you have it with the end that has the buckle. Now, back in the day that this book was written, children could get paddled in school. That cannot happen anymore. That is
paddle?
not legal. Spanking on their bottoms.
Why?
Slowly, Matilda sat down. Oh, the rottenness of this. This is unfair. How dare they expel her for something she didn't do? Matilda felt herself getting angrier and angrier and angrier, so unbearably angry that something was bound to explode inside her.
I just wish
The
Lavender
newt.
would have.
Do you think that Lavender intended on getting Matilda in trouble? No. The newt was still squirming in the tall glass of water. It looked horribly uncomfortable. The glass was not big enough for it. Matilda glared at the Trunchbull. How she hated her. She glared at the glass with the newt in it. She longed to march up and grab the glass and tip the contents, newt and all, over the Trunchbull's head. She trembled to think what the Trunchbull would do if it was on her head. The Trunchbull was sitting behind the teacher's table, staring with a mixture of horror and fascination at this newt wiggling in the glass. Matilda's eyes were riveted on the glass, and now, quite slowly, there began to creep over Matilda a most extraordinary and peculiar feeling. The feeling was mostly in her eyes, like an electricity. It seemed to be gathering inside them. A sense of power was brewing in those eyes of hers. A feeling of strength was inside those eyes of hers. But there was something else altogether which she could not understand, like flashes of lightning. Little waves of lightning seemed to be flashing out of her eyes. Her eyeballs were beginning to get hot, as though vast energy was building up somewhere inside them. It was an amazing sensation. She kept her eyes steady on the glass, and now the power was concentrating itself in one small part of each eye, growing stronger and stronger, and it felt as though millions of tiny little invisible arms with hands on them were shooting out of her eyes towards the glass that she was staring at. Tip it, Matilda whispered. Tip it over. She saw the glass wobble. It tilted backwards a fraction of an inch, then righted itself up again. She kept pushing at it with all those millions of invisible little tiny arms inside of her eyes that were reaching, feeling the power that was flashing straight from the two little black dots in the very center of her eyeballs. Tip it over, she whispered again. Once more the glass wobbled. She pushed harder still, willing her eyes to shoot out more power, and then, very, very slowly, so slowly she could hardly see it happen, the glass began to lean backwards, farther and farther and farther backwards until it was balancing on just one edge of its base, and there it teetered for a few seconds before finally it toppled over, falling with a sharp little tinkle onto the desktop. The water in it and the squirming newt splashed all over Miss Trunchbull's chest. Look. Do you see it?
Yeah, it does show on the cover of the movie Matilda has like a white finger.
Are you ready? The Trunchbull looked down and saw it, and she bellowed even louder. With a swipe of her hand, she sent the creature flying across the room. It landed on the floor beside Lavender's desk, and very quickly Lavender ducked down, picked it up, Put it in the pencil box for another time. A newt was a useful thing to have. The Trunchbull, her face like a boiled ham, more red than ever, was standing beside the class, quivering with fury. Her chest was heaving in and out, and the splash of water down the front of it made a dark, wet patch. Who did this? She roared. Come on, own up, step forward. You won't escape this time. Who's responsible? Nobody answered. The room was as silent as a tomb. Matilda, it was you, I know it. Matilda, sitting in the second row, sat very still and said nothing. A strange feeling of serenity, calmness, and confidence was sweeping over her, and all of a sudden she found out that she was frightened by nobody in the world. With the power of her eyes alone, she had compelled a glass of water to tip and spill its contents over the horrible headmistress, and anybody who could do that could do anything. Speak up! Admit that you did it. Matilda looked right back into the flashing eyes. I have not moved away from my desk, Miss Trunchbull, since the lesson began, and I can say no more. Suddenly, the entire class seemed to rise up. She didn't move! They cried out. Matilda didn't move. Nobody moved. You knocked it over yourself. I most certainly did not knock it over myself. How dare you suggest a thing like that? Speak up, Miss Honey. You must have seen everything. Who knocked over my glass? None of the children did, Miss Trunchbull. I can vouch for it. And nobody has moved from his or her desk all this time, except for Nigel, and he has not moved from the corner. Miss Trunchbull glared at Miss Honey. Miss Honey met her gaze without flinching. I'm telling you the truth, headmistress. You must have knocked it over without knowing it. That sort of thing is easy to do. Oh, I'm fed up with all of you. I'm not wasting any more of my time here. And with that, she marched out of the classroom, slamming the door. In the stunned silence that followed, Miss Honey walked up to the front of the class and stood behind her. Whew! I think we've had enough school for one day, don't you? Class is dismissed. You may all go to the playground and wait for your parents to come and take you home. And that is the end of the first miracle. And my question to you is, what was the miracle that happened in this story?
I know.
What was Matilda able to do with her eyeballs?
She can shoot little.
She's a wizard.
Ooh,
She
like a
can
wizard.
shoot little tiny eyes out of her hands out of her eyeball.
Maybe.
She has a wet finger.
Maybe.
Well-
So tune in tomorrow to hear the second miracle. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the sunshine.
Bye.